does seem like some of these candidates are steering away from the conversation.
I would say the candidate who has the greatest chance of peeling away some of the evangelical support from Trump is not DeSantis or Haley, and certainly not Chris Christie.
They say this informant needs to be kept secret for their own safety.
The people have the right to know when their elected officials are involved in illegal activity.
Former Vice President Mike Pence filed paperwork today confirming his presidential run, which will formally kick off Wednesday with a speech in Iowa. Mr. Pence is a man of deep Christian faith who has strong support among evangelical Christians. So how should people of faith react now that he's taking on former President Trump, his ex-boss, in the race for the White House? Joining us now to discuss this is Pastor Robert Jeffress, senior pastor of the First Baptist Church and author of What Every Christian Should Know, 10 Core Beliefs for Standing Strong in a Shifting World. So let's talk about the evangelical vote a little bit more, because President Trump did receive that in 2016 by large, and in 2020, over 75% of the white evangelical vote. Many people expect that he would likely get it again, but with so many, I think about these people, Tim Scott, Asa Hutchinson, also very strong, outspoken Christians. So does anybody else have a chance to kind of weasel in there and get more of the evangelical vote than Trump in the primaries?
Well, I would say the candidate who has the greatest chance of peeling away some of the evangelical support from Trump is not DeSantis or Haley, and certainly not Chris Christie. I think it's Mike Pence. I think he stands the best chance of peeling away some of the vote.
You know, some of the concern from evangelicals that I've heard from evangelical leaders is that even though Trump is the president who helped overturn Roe versus Wade and his administration, they wish he was a little bit stronger now on his abortion stance. Do you think that he should be a little bit more aggressive on that in 2024?
Well, I've talked with President Trump about it. I think, frankly, he's been misunderstood about his abortion position. I think he's very pro-life. But what President Trump is simply acknowledging is a reality, and that is that if you want a national abortion ban, there's going to have to be compromise. Most Americans do not agree with a 6-week, no exceptions policies, but the left needs to understand most people don't agree with any exception ban or a 30-week time limit. So there's going to have to be a compromise if you have a national ban, and I think that's all President Trump is saying.
How do you think that evangelicals should be talking about this? Because obviously we know that God values life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the national debate is something quite different, and it does seem like some of these candidates are steering away from the conversation. So what's your advice to people as they look for a candidate?
Well, I think they need to get somebody who is certainly unapologetically pro-life. I am a pro-life pastor, and I don't back down from doing that. But I think it needs to be somebody who's rooted in reality, too. And I think President Trump understands the realities of politics. And I think, Lindsay, in the final analysis, most evangelicals are going to remember there is one man who's responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade and consigning it to the dustbin of history, and that man's name is Donald J. Trump.
I do want to get your perspective on this before we go, Pastor, because we've seen a bit of concern right now as it pertains to our country. You look at someone like Target, the Dodgers, a lot of different companies, as we're in Pride Month in June, who are really embracing that. And Christians think, how should I respond? Should I boycott Target? Should I boycott the Dodgers? What's your advice?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to say we cannot afford to celebrate what God has condemned. And God has condemned any sexual relationship outside marriage between a man and a woman. That means we shouldn't take pride in adultery. We shouldn't take pride in incest. We shouldn't take pride in homosexual behavior or transgenderism. Anything that is a violation of God's standard is something not to be prideful of. It's something to be repented of. And I think every Christian will make up their own mind about, does that mean a boycott or not? But I think regardless, we need to speak out and uphold God's standard in a confused world.
Representative Jeff Van Drew, Republican of New Jersey. Congressman, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here this evening. Okay, help us break this down, because ultimately, Congressman Comer, who's the chair of this committee, has said, I've seen the document, but it's not good enough because FBI director hasn't turned it over to us. Is that fair?
Oh, it's very fair. I mean, there's no question he's in contempt of Congress. We've had this with the FBI, not only in his committee, in Comer's committee, but in my Judiciary Committee that's chaired, by a great chair who's been trying to get, Jim Jordan, who's been trying to get information out. We all have. And so we would get these, pieces of information from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and not only them, but also from the Department of Justice, or whether it was the IRS, or whether it was the Attorney General, just a lot of different people. Everything would be redacted. I mean, we had some literally documents that were so redacted that all you basically saw would be like a yours truly at the end of the document. This is important information. They are protecting illegal activity. I'm sorry to say that, but it's true. They're not giving us the whole scoop. And that information should not only be for the chairman, but it should be for the entire committee. And at some point, the American public. The American public has a right to know when their president, former vice president, is involved in illegal activity. And this is just an attempt by the FBI, CIA, other agencies, I just named them all, to protect the president, to protect Democrats. I don't know what else to say, but it's true. And it's tiresome, and it's not right, and it shouldn't exist. And what Comer is doing is exactly right. This is contempt and absolutely should not be involved. And we cannot give up, and we cannot stop until we get the truth and get the true information.
So one of the concerns from the FBI is something that you brought up, that this would go public, that it would be made public. Now, obviously, this isn't a classified document. It's a secret document. But we had Comer's counterpart in the Senate, Chuck Grassley, Senator Grassley, say that if they receive the document, he would make it available to the public. And that is one of the FBI's concerns, because they say this informant needs to be kept secret for their own safety. So is that a real concern for the FBI? Because it seems like this would go public.
We can still keep the informant protected. I mean, there's no question about that. And we've tried to do that with other informants that have come along who've tried to tell the truth and really let the information out. Again, whether it's the Department of Justice or it's the IRS or the CIA or the FBI, we've tried very much when these watchdogs come forward to keep them safe. I honor them for what they do. We can keep them safe and not say where all the information came from, but let the information out. I mean, certainly that would be like saying, well, we never really could let out, all those years ago, the Watergate information, because that could indicate that some people were involved and we don't want anybody to know that. That's nonsense. This is the people's government. The people have the right to know when their elected officials are involved in illegal activity. When are they going to know? When is the truth going to come out? How come the Democratic truth always comes out as easily as you want, but when it comes to Republicans, we can't get the information that we need? And it's real. This isn't politics. This is real information that American people deserve to know. We got to clean this place up. Washington is a swamp, and it's time to clean it up. And if they're not going to do it the right way, then we've got to play hard, and we've got to do everything we can to get the information.